Welcome to our session. Our session is titled Creating Language Inclusive Classrooms for English Language Learners. My name is Kiran Abraham, and
I'm Fanny Lee.
Okay. We wanted to start off our session by acknowledging the territories that Fanny and I are currently on. We are on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And something that's been really top of mind for me in my own journey with reconciliation and understanding Indigenous cultures and Indigenous history is thinking in particular about the role of language and the loss of language through the residential school system. And then trying to think about how, with our language learners, how at various points in history, we have inadvertently tried to minimize home language use of students in the classroom by promoting English only policies, and how so much of the literature has now changed on that. And so thinking about ways that schools and communities are really trying to honor and celebrate Indigenous culture and Indigenous languages, and thinking about ways that we can honor and bring into the classroom all languages of the diverse language learners that we teach.
So my name is Fanny Lee. I'm currently the ELL district helping teacher for the school district of Burnaby. Before I had this role, I was an ELL teacher for K-7, and I've also been an enrolling teacher for primary and intermediate grades.
And I'm Kiran. I am currently a socials and ELL secondary teacher. I've previously been in district roles, like the district helping teacher or district consultant for the city of Burnaby. And before that, I've done a mix of teaching secondary English, ELL, a little bit of LSS, and social studies. We want to make sure that participants, if you don't already, we would love for you to have a pencil and paper nearby to write with, and or a device, something that you can type out your thoughts, because we are hoping to try to have this session be a little bit interactive. Okay.
All right. So our intent for this workshop today is to support K-12 educators with the creation of language inclusive classrooms, which will honor the diverse home languages of our students and will also acknowledge the lived experiences that our students have. Sorry. We want to leverage our students' first language to help them because it's a very powerful tool for supporting language development. And we also want, as educators, we need to be aware and keep in mind that some of our children may have experienced trauma or may be experiencing trauma right now. And we want to keep that in mind while we're supporting them and to learn the best that they can and to reach the high academic standards and learn English. Thank you.
The topics that we're going to be focusing on and sort of interspersing throughout today's presentation is thinking of ways that teachers can structure their classroom or their learning environments in ways that foster community and include home languages. We also really want to be providing you with specific actionable strategies that you can take and use in your classrooms right away tomorrow that are helpful for not only multilingual students, but also for all learners in the classroom. And we also want to make connections to trauma-informed practices to the first two topics that we mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So throughout this presentation, you will see this icon of a toolbox, and this is our explicit way of showing you that we're talking about a strategy that we hope will help you in your teaching context. The other icon that we'll be using is the one for the 4 components of compassionate learning communities. We're using the model of the British Columbia Ministry of Education, and we've provided some links there for you. Okay, we don't profess to be trauma-informed practice specialists, but we're hoping that our strategies will fit into those 4 pillars.
Okay, the first strategy that we want to share is creating content and language objectives in student-friendly language. So our goal for today and our objectives that we wanted to share with you as participants in this session are as follows. So our content objective is to create a toolkit of language strategies which support trauma-informed practices. So that's the what that we're hoping to provide for you today. And our language, or our how, is that we want to be creating multiple opportunities for authentic oral and written language practice in today's session. And so using content and language objectives is a really effective way for students to understand what it is that they're expected to be learning and how they're expected to express that learning in a particular lesson or a particular class. And it's also a really great way for the teacher to clarify what it is that they're hoping to focus on. So what is it that you want students to walk away from that class or that lesson in terms of content, and how do you want them to be engaging with that content? And that would be your language goal.
So we're going to start with looking at who our language learners are. So in the chat, if you would please share the profile of your English language learner that you teach. And Kiran's going to give us an example of who she teaches in her classroom.
Yeah, so right now I'm in a secondary context. I teach one block of a sheltered ELL class for expanding students that focuses on social studies. In that class, I have mainly students who are here on PR or temporary work study permit families. And majority of my students come from China, Taiwan, region, with a few from other countries in the world, but that's my predominant group in that class. I also teach mainstream social studies, and I have students who are consolidating and bridging ELL students in that class. And those students come from more of a range of places around the world, with a couple of international students interspersed there as well.
Okay, thank you. So if you could take a couple of moments and type in the profile of your learners into our chat, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Itinerant K-7 small groups, pull-out model. And I'm a district ELL helping teacher, so I go into different schools to work with students. I was just having a conversation with Kiran about some students that I was supporting today. Oh, I see. I see. I teach K-7 ELL pull-out model again. That's 2. So the next thing we would like you to do in the chat is share one strategy that has been very effective in supporting your language learners in your context. So if you could again put that in the chat, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, you see. Okay, so we've got a mix from
Oh yeah,
ECE all the way up to secondary. That's
perfect.
great.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing the context or the profile of your students. We would love for you to just quickly type in a quick strategy that you use that's been effective in supporting your language learners. We understand it's after school and it's been a long day, and we are asking you to participate, and it can be a little bit tough sometimes. But what we'll do is oh, here we go. For my newcomers, I like to pair up some students, aides, with them as mentors. Fantastic. So having a kind of a buddy system.
Yes, and visuals with little ones.
Yes, visuals with
yeah.
littles and with the bigs as well.
Yeah.
Visuals are very important. Awesome. So this strategy, there you go.
Yeah, so this strategy is called the waterfall strategy. And you can imagine if we had a large group of us and we were typing all our comments into the chat box, it would be like a cascade of comments. I really like this strategy because everyone gets a chance to participate. All right. And the other thing we've done is we've activated your personal connection. So we've touched upon what you know. So for the trauma-informed practice, that's the connection pillar. All right.
An example of how this could look, not in an online format. So in a classroom, when I'm doing the waterfall strategy, it's letting students know in advance that I'm going to be asking them a question, and we're going to be going all through the classroom and having everyone share a thought. And in terms of activating personal connections, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. What I do a lot with my higher level students is I have a keyword that we're going to be focusing on that class, and I ask them to translate it into their language. We've been doing this a lot with World War I, actually, and some of the keywords that we're learning there, and thinking about connections they can make to their own home countries about some of the words that we're learning about, like propaganda or corruption or things like that. A next strategy that we're going to do is an anticipation guide, or an agree or disagree. It comes in different names. And we're going to ask you to again type into the chat your answers or your guesses for what you think about these common second language acquisition myths or maybe truths. So the first one is true or false. Do you feel like children learn second languages quickly or easily? And we would love if you could just type into the chat true or false for this one.
Number one's true.
True. 2 truths. Okay.
Yeah, 2 truths.
So the research, secondary students can take a bit longer. Yeah.
Okay.
So the research on this is a little bit mixed. So, younger children can learn second languages quicker and easier in some ways, in the sense that they can pick up the social language fairly quickly. And oftentimes we notice things like their oral fluency or their pronunciation might be a little bit smoother the earlier that they're learning a language. But actually, sometimes for our intermediate or our secondary students, depending on how much first language literacy they have, it can actually be easier sometimes for our older students to transfer the academic language that they have in home language to academic language in English. So sometimes our younger ones are quicker at picking up social language and ease in conversation and ease in pronunciation. And sometimes for our older students, they might be more adept at picking up academic language because they're able to language transfer if they've had the opportunity to build up literacy skills in home language. The next one, we've sort of already addressed this one, but we'll ask you anyways. The younger the child, the more skilled in acquiring a second language. We'll just ask you to type in true or false.
False.
Yeah, so this one is very much the answer that I kind of gave for the first one. The third one, the more time spent in a second language context, the quicker the learning. Could you please type in true or false for this one? The more time spent in a second language context, the quicker the learning.
Oh, I see. True. True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So the research on this one is like most things in second language learning is a little bit mixed. And so while it's great to be immersed in the language that you're learning in that language, we do need to provide targeted, scaffolded language support for students to be able to acquire the target language. And so if we think about our students who are placed in fully English speaking classrooms, yes, they might be picking up some vocabs and pronunciation and social language, but to truly build their academic language, they do need targeted ELL support. And that's really important. Okay, we'll do one more. Children have acquired a second language once they can speak it. Do we think that that's true or false?
False.
Mhm. False.
Oh, lots
Yeah.
of
Okay.
false. Okay.
Yeah. So speaking is one component of learning a language. We say that there's four domains: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And so, yes, it's wonderful when students can speak a language, and oftentimes their oral fluency can lead to success in reading and writing. But it can be a little bit deceptive sometimes when you're having conversations with students with how comfortable you're able to hold a conversation on social topics, and then you take a look at their reading and writing and be like, oh, yeah, they would benefit from a little bit more ELL support. So this strategy is called an anticipation guide. And we love to do it both in a pull-out model for elementary or in a sheltered model for our secondary students, but it's also great in mainstream classes as well. It's a great way for students to make guesses about what they're going to be learning. And this is priming them for the learning that's then going to happen later. So students are taking a guess at what the learning could be. Then when they learn the actual material, they'll be able to understand it in a deeper way and also remember it in a little bit of a deeper way as well, because they've taken that time to do the guesswork ahead of time. So sometimes what we like to do is we do an anticipation guide perhaps at the start of a unit and also at the close of a unit to see how answers may or may not have changed. And this is a great connection to the trauma-informed lens that Fanny shared earlier, and that it helps build a relationship because students are sharing their thoughts and sharing their guesses with one another. And it can be a really low stakes way for students to share information with each other because nobody necessarily really knows the answers to these. We're all sort of taking some guesses and taking a risk here together.
Okay, so just a little bit of background. The Ministry of Education in British Columbia has a language continuum and it has 5 levels. So when we have students who are at the beginning level, that's literally someone at the very beginning of their journey in terms of learning English. A student who is considered to be developing is a student who has some words, some phrases, and sentences that they understand and are able to use. An expanding student is someone who can communicate in English, but may need support with the academic vocabulary that they're encountering. Our consolidating students are students who can understand and communicate many ideas with supports for figurative language and abstract academic context. So students who are bridging are students who can communicate very fluently, but they need support with the very nuanced language, parts of our language, right?
So we always joke when we present together that in ELL we love having many different acronyms. So here is a iceberg model, and some of you may be familiar with this. And we wanted to just highlight some of the key terms that pop up in language acquisition research. And so this comes from the work of Jim Cummins, Hetty Rosing, and Pat Cover. So if you look on the left-hand side, first we start with above the iceberg of something called BICS. And BICS are basic interpersonal communicative skills. Easier way to describe it is our social language, or the language that we use on the playground or things like that. So we have that in our home language, and we also have that for students who are learning English as an additional language. Underneath the water, underneath the bottom of the iceberg, is our CALP, our cognitive academic language proficiency. So our BICS, our social language, often takes about 1 to 2 years for students to develop, but our cognitive academic language proficiency can take much longer. So older research shows that it can take about 5 to 7 years or so. Some research indicates even longer than that for students to get to grade level proficiency, which shows the importance of really targeted ELL support for a number of years for our students. The piece in the middle is really important to highlight, and that's CULP, which is Common Underlying Language Proficiency. So in the past, in ELL, we thought of language learning languages to have just sort of discrete boxes in our brain, and so that the languages did not interact with one another. Further research has indicated that there is quite a bit of overlap between languages, and so this CULP, as you can see, is underneath the water, and it connects the home language and English as an additional language. And so that it's really important in this model that shows us that it's really important for us to bring in home language as a tool to help us build skills in English, because students are naturally in their brains intermixing the language. So the more that we can support them with that orally or in the classroom is going to help actually accelerate their English language acquisition.
So next we're going to talk about translanguaging. Translanguaging is the use of multiple languages to communicate and support learning. The use of a student's dominant language can assist in learning a new target language. So I'm going to give you an example. I've been trying to learn Spanish. And if there's anyone in the audience who actually is a native Spanish speaker, I'm sorry, but I'm going to demonstrate to you what it looks like. So if I was to translate the sentence, does Kiran live in Burnaby with her husband and her 2 daughters? In my mind, this is what I'm doing as I'm translanguaging. First, I can right off the bat say, Kiran vive en Burnaby con esposo. Wait a minute. I forgot to include the word her. So in Spanish, it's su, tu, mi, nuestro. I want to use su. Kieran vive en Burnaby con su esposo y for and now I need 2. So I'm going to start counting in my head in Spanish. Uno, dos. Then I have children. Hija, hijo, feminine, ends with an S because there's 2 of them. And then I have Kieran vive en Burnaby con su esposo y 2 hijas. Her. I forgot her. So now I need to add an S to su because it's plural. Kieran vive en Burnaby con su esposo y sus 2 hijas. Question mark. I'm done. Oh, wait, no. In Spanish, the punctuation is different. There needs to be an upside down question mark at the beginning of the question. Kieran vive en Burnaby con su esposo y sus 2 hijas. And there we are. There's a picture of her 2 lovely children. So that's translanguaging. So translanguaging is a very safe, it's part of a safe and welcoming environment in the classroom. So things that can support translanguaging in the classroom are immersive reader. Immersive reader is part of the Office 365 suite. It is a very powerful tool. It will read text out loud to students. It will color code parts of speech. It will break up words into syllables, and it also has a picture dictionary that your children can use. Another way to support translanguaging in the classroom is to use PowerPoint Live. Um, you can turn that on and it will caption everything that's being said. It will also caption everything in other languages. Another way, and we've heard this mentioned earlier, is to have a language buddy in the classroom. Any form of translations are very helpful. Reading in dual languages is very helpful as well. There are 3 websites that we can suggest that will help you in your classrooms. Unite for Literacy is an American site. It covers the primary curriculum from K to 3, and it has beautiful photographs, mostly nonfiction topics, and students can listen to a book in their native language and also in English. And this one is free. You don't require a membership or any sign up or anything like that. It's also ad free. Another website that you might like is Storybooks Canada. It has African folk tales that have been translated into multiple languages. You can print them out. For example, you could print out a story all in simplified Chinese and then print it out in simplified, uh, print it out in English, and you can have 2 languages going there. It will also read out loud. This one I would suggest for maybe K to grade 5 or so. The next one is Lita Stories. Lita Stories is is actually the same as Storybooks Canada. It's just meant for upper intermediate and it's more inclusive. There are 30 stories there with audios translated, and it's more for middle school to young adults. Again, stories translated into multiple languages.
Mhm.
Right.
So we just got a question in the chat about, can we elaborate on the first item, immersive reader?
Oh, yes. So immersive reader
Should I
is,
try to show?
oh yeah, let's
Yeah.
do that.
Okay, give us a moment. I'm going to try to navigate to immersive reader
Yeah.
and then,
So immersive reader is part of Word. So you could open up a Word document and get it to read out loud to the student. You can also translate. I don't generally translate a whole document. I would translate keywords. Um, it will also, like I said, give you pictures. So sometimes we have students who are not necessarily literate in their home language. So you can have it'll show you a picture of something that's going on, which is very powerful.
okay, I'm just doing a really simple
Yeah.
sentence. The cat sat on the house. And so you need to be in the Microsoft Word online version, and you go to the View tab and then you click on Immersive Reader. And once you're here, you can play around a lot with the different settings. So you can turn parts of speech on or off if you wanted to color code. That's one option. You could also go to reading preferences, turn on the picture dictionary and turn on the translate option. So you can choose to translate by word. So I can see here, I have the word in English, I have the word in Egyptian Arabic, and then I have photos to help the student understand. I might also want to translate the whole document. So in this way at the top, I can toggle between the original in English and the document. Depending on the language as well, if you click play, it can also read the text for you. And they are continuing to add more and more languages available to this. In terms of translation, like anything, it's not going to be perfect, but it's becoming increasingly more accurate. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go back to here.
So translanguaging supports relationship, capacity, and connection according to in the 4 pillars of trauma-informed practice. All right.
Okay. The next thing that we wanted to touch on is something called the affective filter. And this comes from the work of Stephen Krashen and Noam Chomsky. And so essentially it talks about the impact that stress can have on learning, specifically language learning. So in the right-hand example, we have a student who might be experiencing a lot of stress or anxiety in the learning environment or because of things at home or whatnot. And so even if a teacher is providing really solid, really language appropriate level of comprehensible input, the affective filter is going to narrow, making it much harder for the student to build their language acquisition skills. In contrast, on the left-hand side, we have an example where the affective filter is relaxed or more open. And when a teacher is providing comprehensible input at the appropriate level for a student, that's going to then lead to language acquisition. And we wanted to just highlight this image as it connects to trauma-informed practices and really thinking about ways that we can help our students feel comfortable in the learning space, and highlight the importance of building relationships with our students and to kind of see where they're at and what they might need on a particular day, and understanding that sometimes the relationship building might be more important, especially at the startup of a year, or at various points in the year, than it is to actually focus on the language piece. All right. So an example of a way that we can help calm the affective filter in a classroom is a lot of our students can feel uncomfortable if they are called upon to answer a question. I also can feel nervous sometimes if I'm in a meeting or a workshop and I'm being called upon to provide an answer. So a strategy that teachers can use is something called an I don't know poster. And we got this idea from Sidelets Education out of Texas. And they have this idea of an I don't know poster, and there's lots of different variations and you can customize it for your own context. But essentially you have a large poster placed up in your classroom or your learning space where if you call upon a student to answer a question, you empower them to say different things instead of just saying I don't know and sort of shutting down, and not responding at all. So things that we can recommend students to say in place of I don't know can be things like, may I please have some more information? May I please have some time to think? Would you please repeat the question? I love to use this one in interview settings where I'm trying to think of a response and I need some more time. I need to buy myself some extra wait time. Where could I find more information about this? Or may I ask a friend for help? And that might involve some translation as well. And so putting up a poster like this can help reduce the affective filter in classes because students know if they're called upon, there's other things that they can say other than I don't know. And that by saying one of these statements, we are encouraging the students to eventually respond, but we're giving them the time and space they need to maybe translanguage, maybe search up more information, maybe go back to their textbook, go back to some handouts to try to gather the information. But we are expecting the students to respond. So we are still keeping high expectations, but we're lowering the affective filter so they don't feel pressure to respond exactly in that moment.
So the next strategy we're going to talk about is called sweep. Is you say it as sweepers. It's actually 2QP. Sorry, S2QP2RS. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous today. And this particular strategy will build upon the students' capacity and connection. So while we're actually going to use this right now, first you're going to be asked to look at survey the titles and subtitles of some text we have for you. After that, we're going to ask you to do some questioning. So what do you think we will learn? What questions do you have about this particular topic? Next, we're going to ask you to write down a prediction on the piece of paper that you have beside you and do some reading. So reading can be done in a group, it can be done individually, orally, whatever your children are used to. And then we're going to ask you to respond to the question that you created and then summarize the text. Right? So today's text is summary of the 4 components of compassionate learning communities that support trauma-informed practices are understanding, connection, relationship, and capacity. If you could please survey all those titles and then write what you think you're going to learn about and any questions that you may have. Okay. Next, if you would please write a prediction about what we will be reading. And then we would like you to respond or answer your own question on your paper there.
After they read.
Oh, yes, that's right. So we're reading first.
Is it okay to put it up?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to read independently. And once you've done that, please summarize your learning. Right? So this strategy we like to use because it helps students engage actively with the text. It improves comprehension and retention, and it also encourages critical thinking and self-regulation in reading.
Okay.
Thank you. Right, so these, right, go ahead.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to discuss through another strategy as well is creating classroom community. Okay. Oh, question. Do you get students to write all of that? Yeah, and so we would ask students to write to that. Depending on the age and the proficiency level, it might be done orally. You might also provide sentence stems and keywords that you're hoping that students to include.
Yeah.
But for sure, we would have our students write this down. If you have whiteboards in your class, this is a really great use of whiteboards. And if not, just any kind of scrap paper would work as well. With the little ones, orally would be perfectly acceptable as
Yeah,
well. So take a look at this picture. What do you think the book is going to be about? Take a guess at what you think could happen in this story or this article. And then after, maybe the teacher reads it, for example, if with the littles.
Mhm.
And then how the students try to answer their questions orally.
Yeah, and in classroom, we would have visual clues as to
Yeah.
when to move on to the next step.
Yeah. It's also something that could be done in language buddies or in partners. But just because we're adults and we're virtual, and we thought this would be best for individuals to do this on their own. Thank you for your question. The next one is creating classroom community. So our question to you is, how do we create community in a classroom with ELL students? And so we're going to be showing you another strategy called again, another acronym, QSSSA strategy. And this is a strategy where you pose a question, first of all, to the students. You provide a sentence or multiple sentence stems for the students to be able to use for answering. You create a signal for them to share with you when they are done. You have a sharing, so you encourage students to share answers with one another. And then there's some kind of assessment done by the teachers. And so how this could look is I might pose a question to my class and have a series of sentence stems up on my whiteboard or up on a piece of chart paper. And my signal to the class is, please stand up when you have a sentence and you are ready to share. Once I see that most of my class is standing, then I'm going to say, okay, time to find a buddy in the classroom. A silly one that we like to use is find your soul mate. So find someone that has a similar pair of shoes that you do, pair up, and then share your responses with one another. At this point, as teachers, we could either randomly call upon groups to share their answers because they've had time to practice their talking and their pronunciation, their fluency with a partner, or perhaps we might choose to just wander through the classroom space and listen into conversations, and that can suffice as our assessment. So we wanted to have you engage in this strategy just to practice it up for yourself. So our question to you is, how do we create community in a classroom with ELL students? The sentence stems that we're providing for you are to choose one of the following. We can create community by blank. In my experience, blank works best to foster a feeling of communication, community, and belonging, or a sense of community comes from blank. And just because we're virtual, we're not going to ask for a signal today. We're just going to ask if you would feel comfortable to please, once you have a sentence stem completed, to just type it in the chat, and then we can sort of share out and read out what participants write down. So if you could take a couple of minutes and choose one of the sentence stems and to complete the sentence and put that in the chat for us. Thank you.
We can create community by teacher and class learning greetings in different languages. Sorry, I shouldn't.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I can see this. In my experience, shared experiences like field trips, cultural events, or special activities or clubs work best to foster a feeling of community and belonging.
Yeah, also very beautiful. Getting out of the classroom space and connecting. Fantastic. Oh, show and tell. Yes.
Yeah.
My kids have show and tell at daycare and they love it. Sharing time. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, my second experience.
Yeah. Everyone loves to talk a little bit about themselves and share something special. Awesome.
Yes.
So hopefully you see this as a strategy that you can take and apply. It works in elementary, it works in secondary, it works in ELL pullout spaces, it works in academic classrooms as well, the whole range. Because again, it's a way to lower the affective filter. We are providing sentence stems. Depending on the age and the proficiency, we might also provide keywords to help flesh out the sentence stems. We're creating a signal so students can take their time in filling out their responses, and we are not calling upon anyone. We're leaving it up to the students to signal when they might be ready to share. We're sharing only in partners to start. So we're not asking students to share out to the entire group. So it's a bit more low stakes. And when it comes down to the assessment piece, perhaps another way that we can continue to keep the affective filter open and relaxed is have students share what their partner said rather than sharing something that they said. So it's sort of removing that pressure of students sharing their own personal thoughts and opinions, which can sometimes be overwhelming for language learners. Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the next thing we would like you to do is take a look at this picture. Normally in the classroom, I would hand out pictures and kids could actually write on it, or you could have a big picture posted somewhere in the classroom and you could label things. What you're going to do is maybe write down some more words of what you see in this picture that relates to a classroom community.
We'll give you about a minute, maybe just on your pieces of paper or on your device that you have next to you. You don't have to put this in the chat. Just write down things that you see in the photo.
I'm going to give you one more minute and then we're going to move on to the next step. So the next step would be you could add more words to the picture, but then you would then sort your words into nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And this could be done together as a group. And then you could slowly back off a little bit and get them to do it on their own. Okay. So if you would do that, the words that you have written down on your paper right now, could you please divide them up into nouns, verbs, and adjectives? And now we're going to create a sentence. And we've provided some sentence stems for you to start. In this place, I can observe. This picture shows. In this picture, I noticed. If you could use some of the words that you wrote down on your paper and finish those sentences, and then share your sentence in the chat. In this picture, I observed differentiated instructions, some students working independently while others are working together. That's fantastic. This picture shows collaboration, helping each other out and exchanging ideas. So this is called the picture word induction model. So essentially you start with an interesting picture. You can, in the classroom, sometimes I make several pictures. Sometimes I slide them in one of those plastic sleeves and I get the kids to write on them, or I might have one big one and I might project it onto the whiteboard and I might help them with all the words and get them to generate some words with me. After that, we would categorize the words into the parts of speech, such as nouns, verbs, and adjectives, and then move on to making the sentences. So in this way, the kids have the words up there. They're helping each other generate words, and it's very safe because we've created some sentence stems for them to use. All right.
Awesome.
Oh, I have more.
Oh,
okay. Let's see. In this picture, I noticed children working collaboratively with their teachers, facilitating their learning.
Lovely.
Yes. Oh, and this one too. In this picture, I noticed students of diverse backgrounds working cooperatively and sharing technology.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and this is a great strategy because it works for a range of students in the classroom. So if you have students who are at the beginning of their English language learning journey, they could find a way in. And if you have students who are fluent or native English speakers, there's also lots of room for them to grow in doing an activity like this because we're all starting from the same image, but the words that we're pulling, the sentences that we're creating can be right at the level where students are at, but it's a way for everyone in the class to be working together and be connected in their learning. Okay. We wanted to just to do a quick summary of the strategies that we've used in today's session to highlight them for you, and also to highlight this book that we use quite a bit in both of our different areas. And it's the 99 Ideas and Activities for Teaching English Learners with the SIOP model. Fantastic tips and strategies. If you're able to get your hands on that or ask your library to perhaps order a copy for teacher reference, it's really helpful. So we started off our session today with content and language objectives. And so again, this is providing the what and the how of what we're hoping that students or participants are going to take away at the end of a lesson or a workshop or a class. And we're trying to write it in student-friendly language so it's accessible for learners.
Okay. And then we talked about the waterfall strategy where students can just write out all their answers. It can be done in the chat. In real life, you can have, again, those whiteboards and they can write up their answers and hold them up. This gives a chance, everyone a chance to participate. Because, sometimes we always have those students, that student who always knows the answer. And this gives them time for everyone to participate. Okay.
Mhm. Activating personal connections. So, as much as we can, getting students to think about where they might have heard this word before, heard this idea before, seen an example of this, read something about it, can connect to something in their home country. So, making space in the classroom for students to bring in what is this word or what is this idea in their language and sharing how to pronounce it, perhaps writing it on a board or writing it on a whiteboard, but really trying to make or encourage students to bring in home language and to make those personal connections. Um, and also allowing students to share whatever they feel comfortable with sharing. And so for students who over thinking through the lens of trauma-informed practice, we're really honoring and respecting how much or how little students feel comfortable with sharing or engaging in an activity like this.
Okay. So, are we at translanguaging?
No,
Yeah.
anticipation
Okay.
guide.
Okay.
Yeah. Active anticipation
Okay.
guide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anticipation guide, I really love using this one because it's a really, it creates a lot of laughter and sort of buzz in the room because students are very confused as to why you're asking them to make guesses or to like try to figure things out when they haven't actually learned it. So sometimes I might even like cut out pictures of the plot of a story, for example, and have students place them in the order that they think it's going to happen and explain why. Or here are the events of the French Revolution. In what order do you think they're happening and why? And they're like, we have no idea. I'm like, and that's okay. Like, we're just trying to guess and figure it out. And that when they do the learning, then they'll be like, oh, I got it right. Or no, I got this one completely wrong. And they're going to be more likely to remember and engage with the learning when they've done a bit of priming at the start.
And translanguaging is taking it's very safe. It provides a nice, safe atmosphere for children to learn if you're allowing them to translanguage and use what they're very strong at, and that's their home language or their first language, to help them leverage up into their new language. I was just telling Kieran earlier today that I've been called in to work with two students who have cerebral palsy and are also Korean speakers, and we're trying to figure out how to use touch chat, which is the iPad program that they have for the students, to and use Korean and English to bridge their learning, and it will help them feel safe. And they love hearing their own language. Every time they hear their own language, they smile. And we're hoping to find out what these kids know in their home language and then teach them the equivalent in English, and then from there build on to the academic language.
The next one that we highlighted was the I don't know poster. So a great way to lower the affective filter in the classroom while still keeping the expectations of learning quite high for students. And so it's not an I don't know what I'm going to get out of answering this question. It's providing students with an answer that they can say that's going to encourage them to then do some more learning, ask around, look around, read around, and then come back to you later with an answer. So it's really important with all of our learners to make sure that we're keeping the expectations high, but we're doing so in a way that is making the students feel comfortable with their learning experience in class.
And writing is always that piece the kids like, they're afraid to write. So sentence frames and paragraph frames, we didn't talk about those, but they're essentially the same thing. You have a frame, it has all the writing there, and with blanks for key concepts or key vocabulary that you've been learning in the class. Um, those are very helpful. In the classroom setting, I've had situations where I've had sentence frames and paragraph frames going on at the same time, depending on where the student is and what they feel comfortable with filling in. Sometimes kids will, fill them all in. Sometimes they will share them, sometimes they won't. But it's nice to see a lot of writing happening and the kids being able to explain their learning, knowing that they're not struggling with sentence structure or things like that.
Okay. Sweepers was the activity that Fanny walked you through. So this is when we're asking students to survey a text or like the title, the subtitles before reading, asking them to create a question, asking them to make a prediction, read, respond to their question, and then summarize. And so this is really encouraging active reading. And for our littles, this can be done visually, it can be done orally, it can be done with more or less teacher support, depending on, again, the age of the students and their level of language proficiency.
And so the QSSA again brings back the sentence frames. It gives them time, gives our children time to think, gives them time to answer, and they show us when they're ready, and then we can check. And I think Kieran did a good job of explaining how different ways that you can walk around and check and find out if they have got the content that you're looking for. All right.
And the last one is PWIM. It's fantastic. It can be used in K all the way up through 12. It can be used in pull-out ELL in academic classrooms because we're starting from a visual and students can participate to whatever their level of language proficiency is, and be able to take that picture and use it as a base to jump off of for writing. It can be a great way to start a unit to find out what students might know on a particular topic. It can also be a great way to do a unit end review. Here's this picture, here's all our learning about it. Let's compare what we were able to label from the start of the unit and what we're able to label at the end of a unit on a particular topic. Okay, that brings us to the end of our session. We have included our email addresses here if anyone would like to reach out to us with any additional questions. If you would like a copy of our slides, please feel free to scan the QR code there and you'll be able to access a copy of our slides for your reference. And we also in the chat, thank you, a link as well to the slides. The book is fantastic. We highly
the book
recommend
is
it.
very, very good. Yeah.
Awesome. And we'd like to open it up if anyone has any questions. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or if you feel more comfortable typing in the chat, you're welcome to. Or if you don't want to ask publicly, please feel free to email us and we'll be happy to chat with you separate from the session as well if you'd like. Yeah. We'd also like to thank the Edith Lando Virtual Learning Center for this opportunity, and for all of you for coming after school and a very busy time of year with report cards and winter break coming up and all the various concerts and whatnot. So thank you for your time and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, everyone.